So, I'm Rob. This is really me back here. I have been working on Chocolatey for a long time. It's about 8 years old. Actually, it's over 8 years old. And I have been working in infrastructure automation since 2005, so a very short time. It's just like yesterday when I got started. So another thing that I like is user experience. So I spent a lot of time thinking about that, trying to make things nice for that. So today we're going to talk about Chocolatey. Show of hands, does anybody not know what Chocolatey is? Sweet. All right, an organizational use of Chocolatey, and then I'm going to attempt to follow my own instructions for setting up for an organizational use. This is going to be fun because I've only had to test partial pieces of it, so we're going to try to put it all together and see what happens. All right, so we're going to cover a lot of ground quickly. You are going to see open source and commercial features. And I'm not really going to spend a lot of time on those commercial features, what's what. So if you are interested as you see things where they fall, drop onto chocolatey.org/compare. #compare, you don't need the last part. But so even though everybody knows what Chocolatey is, I'm just going to talk about it briefly. So software management, package management, it is a universal management platform for not just installers, but zips, scripts, binaries, right, as well. What this gives us is a very unique tool that can manage any aspect of Windows software. So nothing else on Windows does that. This kind of sets Chocolatey apart from everything else. So you can think of those Chocolatey packages that you're creating as software deployment automation packages, because that's really what they are, right? So they contain instructions on how to get things deployed. Oh, that's a lot. OK, so with Chocolatey, you're able to manage any software. So I already said this. Another really nice thing about it is true package management. We do get the dependency management as well. That's another thing that you're not going to find in anything else on Windows, but on, of course, Linux and other platforms you will. You're able to write a software deployment one time using PowerShell, and then you're able to test your deployments. How many people in here use SCCM? How many people don't want to admit? OK. So how do you test your deployment of stuff that you're deploying through SCCM? Right? You deploy it to production sometimes. Right? It's a canary deployment. That's not where you want to be. Where you want to be is gaining confidence in your deployment way back when, right, when you're creating the package. And one of the things that Chocolatey has about it is you're able to do that really, really early in the process. And it's really cheap to test those deployments, right, if you're using something like Vagrant. And what's great about Chocolatey is you can also integrate it with SCCM. And so you do get that confidence in your deployments early on. And so when you're deploying to production, you're just testing configuration. That's really what you should be testing once you get to production. Of course, we're able to deploy any supported version of Windows. We supported Windows Server 2019 first day. Thank you, Microsoft, for the nice compatibility. But also Server Core, Docker containers, you can put Chocolatey there. On-prem, in the cloud, really anywhere you have Windows, you can put Chocolatey. And with really any kind of tool. One of the things that Chocolatey doesn't do yet is remote management. So it doesn't do the endpoint management. It exists at the endpoint. So one of the things that we're adding is a deployment mechanism where you can do remote deployments from a central place. Until then, you have Puppet, you have Chef, Ansible, DSC, SCCM, MDT, all of those things. And what's great about that is you can provision a machine with MDT, use those same packages to upgrade them through SCCM or Puppet or some combination thereof, right? And that's pretty handy. And then we're able to track and report on all of that software, right? And that's not just software that is installers, right? And that's kind of important. You know, a security finding, CVEs, they don't just go where add remove programs is at, right? So they're any software on the box. A nice example of that is Shell Shock, right? If you remember that, that was Bash. And Bash came in the form of Git. Git had Bash in it. So did Git Portable, and that was something you simply unpacked. And if you're deploying both of those with Chocolatey, you're able to discover very quickly, you know, where you were affected, and of course, because Chocolatey, you would be able to remediate that as well. Of course, that doesn't take away that need for deep scanning. You just get a lot more confidence really early on that you're going to be protected. All right, so to sum that up, and this is really when we think of Chocolatey, it allows you to deploy any software, anywhere, with anything, right, and then be able to manage and track that software over time. So for everybody that was in the room, anybody knew that exactly like that, or is it a little bit of new information? New information, anybody? Wow, good. Sweet. So that sounds like amazing, right? The thing about reality is there's really nothing that you can buy, right, that's out there that can really take away all that work. You can't throw enough money at something to get rid of it. So I think sometimes, in purchasing departments and you got CIOs and they're like, oh, we buy this thing and it's going to solve all our problems. And Chocolatey can help with that. But it does take some work, right? So it's not magic. It is a framework. It's extremely flexible. Being flexible, that's both its best feature, sometimes its worst feature, because there are inherently bad things you can do when you have that amount of flexibility. Hopefully, as we go through this presentation, you can see some of those good practices, and if you quietly need to go back and change up some things, I won't tell anybody. It does make software management very easy, and it is a very lightweight framework. The nice thing there is I'm not trying to sell you more Windows licenses, not needing 15 servers to set up our infrastructure, unless, of course, you are supporting hundreds of thousands of servers, then you might need a little bit more infrastructure, right? But for the most part, you can do a lot with maybe one Windows machine on the base. So as we look at that, different things with Chocolatey. So when you see, of course, you have the CLI. Most people are very familiar with that. None of you have probably worked with the GUI because we're all on the command line, right? But that's good for our coworkers. Got the GUI for them. Of course, a repository where we're putting stuff. And this is central management. This is more tracking and reporting. We're going to move past that and we'll come back. So let's talk about the two additions really apply to organizations. Either you're picking open source or you're looking at Chocolatey for Business, or C for B as we like to call it. In open source, it is very much in that spirit of open source, so it's very much a DIY approach, do it yourself. So there are a lot of things you can do with Chocolatey, and then on top of that, there are more things that you might build that kind of help that out. When it comes to Chocolatey for Business, there's more UIs, and we have the more UIs because you're going to have coworkers, of course, that really like GUIs, and of course you like the command line. We want to give you both the same tools to do your job at the end of the day. And you're going to have a much smoother experience. So there's a lot of features geared towards organizational use in there. A lot of the things you would build on that DIY, we've already built it. We already support it. You can work with our team to make sure that continues to work really well. So actually, I will talk a little bit about some of those commercial capabilities. So up on the top left here, we have central management. Central management is kind of that central place for reporting, will be that central place for a lot of things, right? So Chocolatey Central Management here, package builder, package uploader, also available on command line, so you can do those things at command line as well, but you get some nice UIs for very quickly being able to create packages or these software deployments. So one of the nice things about package builder is it's about 5 seconds to create a software deployment simply by right-clicking on an installer, and it doesn't have to be an MSI. So it's pretty handy, pretty fast. Package internalizer, up on the top right here. Package internalizer really gets us this ability to reuse packaging from, say, the community repository and not have to be subjected to having to download things at runtime. So when we're in an organizational use, we got to really think about making sure that we're not reaching out to the internet ever at all, unless it's on the side when we're preparing things, right? But at production runtime, we shouldn't be reaching out to the internet. So package internalizer is very important, or at least internalization of packages, because you can do that on open source. Package internalizer just gives you the ability to script it. All right, package audit just tells us a little bit more about who installed what when, and that gives us some more information into what's on these boxes. All right, so package synchronizer down here. This is telling us there's 3 sides of package synchronizer. So we have the ability, the auto sync, what's checking every single time just to make sure that what's installed in programs and features versus our Chocolatey installed packages is staying in sync. There's another area of that called Choco Sync, which will let us take over things. And then, actually, I think we have slides on these, so I'm not going to dive too much into them. The other nice thing is if you have in your organization where you have desktop users that you want to take away their admin rights, or you have taken away their admin rights, and you're really trying to give them a little bit more power, so it's not being a burden on the help desk for having to go and install and upgrade software all the time, you can bring in self-service, right? And self-service gives them that ability to do that, gives them the ability to manage the install and upgrade of optional software, typically that you've approved, that you've put out there. And again, that back end and the maintenance behind that, it doesn't take a lot to put that up. All right, package reducer. This really allows us to keep Chocolatey lean and mean, right? Make sure that it runs optimized, make sure that it continues to run well. So what is Chocolatey? Chocolatey, right? It's software management that works. And why do we want Chocolatey? Because this is not how we should be managing software. Right? Typically, I get two reactions to that. Right? So when we start thinking about organizational use of Chocolatey, the question is, what's possible? So one of my favorite things to share with folks is a framework that Yelp has put together using Jenkins. When a new version of software comes out somewhere, anywhere on the internet, they have something called Automatic Updater. That's actually open source. That's what the community repository uses to make sure that packages get updated within 6 hours of that software coming out. And so they use that, and when the Jenkins pipeline then goes and creates that package, it checks out a VM, runs the tests on that. If everything is good to go, puts it into a queue for approval, right? The full video, don't write this down, I'll give out the slide deck so you can go to it, is here, but I recommend taking a look at that and some of the other Chocolatey Fest videos that we have out there. Chocolatey Fest was great. We had a lot of individuals come in and talk about WinOps-focused stuff. What we'll probably see with this new PowerShell, or I guess it's the DevOps Summit that's going to be in Nashville, will be in a very similar vein. So organizational use, we have to think about a few things. One of those is packaging, right? We are creating our own packages. We are reusing packages possibly from the community repository, and how do we do that, right? And then we need a place to put those packages. Of course, that's going to be internal repositories. And then we want to deploy and manage that software on those machines. We do that by coupling Chocolatey with another tool. And of course, reporting. And reporting really gives us that information into, hey, when is it time to upgrade? And what are the different tools that we can bring in there? We're not going to touch too much into source control or continuous integration because we only have 45 minutes, and both of those are their own talks that will take a lot longer. So this is Chocolatey architecture. How many people have seen this diagram before? You don't work? Nobody. Man, I'm trying to give out shirts here. Anybody not get a shirt the other night? Okay, I have at least one shirt to give out, maybe two. So when we take a look at this, everything in that blue box, whether we're using open source Chocolatey or commercial edition of Chocolatey, we should be doing exactly that. And you'll notice that we have our own internal repositories that are plugged into these things. We're not even going to the community repository to install Chocolatey. We've already pulled Chocolatey in here to our repository. That's where we deploy from. So everything is internal. We can go into completely air-gapped networks and not have to worry that it's reaching out at all, right? That's exactly what we want. There are multiple reasons for that, even if you don't have an air-gapped network, and we're going to talk about those as we talk about repositories. So right there, the repositories, the very first question I get from a lot of folks once we start talking is, well, why can't we just use the community repository? What's wrong with that? And my reaction is probably similar to this. Now they can't usually see me, so it's good. But there's a community package repository out there. It's been up for about 7.5 years. It is maintained by the community. There are vendors that do put their own packages up there. But the important thing to keep in note is we do have moderation on that. So every single version of every package does not go live as soon as it's pushed. It goes into a queue, and it gets checked for quality and consistency. It gets checked to be sure they can actually install properly. It also gets checked against virus total. So we take all those binaries and ship them up to get checked against 60 to 70 antivirus scanners that are really amped up. And at the end of that, if everything is good, there's still typically a human at the end of that gives it that final approval. Because there are some things that computers aren't so good at checking, right? So we still need that nice human element there. Once they give it that approval, that's when it's live. That's when we can install it. When it comes to organizational use of Chocolatey, though, we got to think about reliability, right? And a public repository that's out there, that community repository, can never be fully reliable. The reason for that is distribution rights, copyright laws, right? The packages that are up there typically have to go download that software from the official location at runtime, right? So if you can imagine pulling that package in, running it, and it's going to go, oh, I need to go download Google Chrome from over here. It goes and gets it from Google Chrome, pulls it down. Now, when you're using Chocolatey personally, that's completely okay. If you're using Chocolatey in the context of an organization, probably not the most reliable thing. Not a good idea. And so we recommend internalization of those packages, and we'll talk about that. So when we're creating our internal repositories, our recommendation is going to be one of these top 3 here. These are what we call repository servers, Artifactory Pro, Nexus, or ProGet. They have one installation, and in that installation we have the ability to create multiple repositories, which is great because repositories is where we apply permissions. So if you have one department that gets access to certain things, another department gets access to other things, you wouldn't put it all in one repository. You'd separate those repositories and put some authentication on the front of them, right? And so you do that at the repository level. If you're using Chocolatey server, or Chocolatey.server, or Simple server, whatever you want to call it, you have to stand up one of those each time you want a new repository. Another nice thing about the repository servers is it is a web-based interface for them, and they got RBAC built into them, tend to integrate into LDAP, and they also support other types of repositories, not just Chocolatey and NuGet. So one of those is binary repositories. So if you have SQL Server, which is like 6 gigabytes, you could drop that into a binary repository and keep it out of that Chocolatey package, but reach out and grab the package, and then reach out and grab that binary as part of that package installation. So when you're creating Chocolatey packages, about 1 to 2 gigabytes is as big as you want that compiled package to be. Speaking of packaging, now we're rolling right in. So 2 elements of packaging, of course, creating them locally and then doing some sort of internalization method. Now what we see most people do is if they have the commercial side, they run package internalizer on like a Jenkins agent in the DMZ. The great thing about all of this here is we actually have a full walkthrough for this in our docs that goes through automating package internalizer. Unfortunately, when I was running through demos, we're not going to have enough time to kind of go through that, so I'll just point you to where it is. And so what does that look like, package internalizer? It's about taking a package from that community repository, pre-downloading it, finding all the URLs, downloading them, baking them into the package, and then rewriting the package to use that. Or you could also put them somewhere internal, point to that, and you have full control of it that way. The nice thing about package internalizer is it can do all that, and it can be automated. So we were talking about with the automation, it's able to do all of that nice stuff for you. So on the other side of that, of course, we are going to create some of our own packages, and we do that through Choco New. And this is going to generate packaging files. And the reason that we recommend Choco New versus copy pasta, where you copy something and start making changes to it, is there's a lot of interweave documentation and examples when you run Choco New. So there's a default template, and it kind of puts all that stuff there. It's going to show you stuff like, oh, there's a test environment you can test, so it's going to give you information about that. It does give you information about other things as well. If you're thinking, okay, well, that's good, I want to go faster, maybe I have a lot of software that I'd like to run, get ready, because I have to package all that software up as Chocolatey packages. I bring in something like Package Builder, and I can simply right-click on that executable installer, that MSI, that zip, and select from the context menu to create that Chocolatey package, and in 5 seconds, I get that fully unattended software deployment. What's good about that is, of course, I can do it on the command line as well. That's what we'll be doing, right, on the command line. That means I can script it, which is also great, so I can point to a whole archive of installers. The nice thing is we've already pre-written that script for you. So if you go out to the Package Builder feature page, you'll see that script that's there, and all you have to do is put the archive location for your software and then just let it run, right? And it's going to go through and very quickly start creating packages, and about 70% or more of those installers are going to be able to fully automate. For those that it's not, what it's going to do is it's going to get everything arrange it up nicely, and it drops a little to-do file in there. And this to-do file is very specific. It says you need to do this, you need to do this, and then you're automated, right? So that's pretty handy. So that's a good way to ramp up very quickly. If you are dealing with non-silent installers, we say the technical name for these are craptastic installers. The ones that you run, you pass all the silent switches, and it still has pop-ups, right? Things that don't go away. There are things out there like AutoHotkey that can kind of help out with this. We don't necessarily recommend AutoHotkey because if you're deploying that through DSC or Puppet or something else, typically you're going through a Windows service, and it does not have access to be interactive, so AutoHotkey is out. What we recommend instead is something called MSI repackaging. Is everybody familiar with MSI repackaging? Quite a few people. Yeah, so MSI repackaging is just recording that installer, and when it's done, you get an MSI you deploy instead. So this has been around for more than 20 years. I think it started because of SCCM not supporting executable installers way back in the beginning. But MSI repackaging there, and that's kind of that industry standard for taking these terrible installers and kind of repackaging them into something that works. There are other uses for emissary packaging. We'll not really get into that. But one of the nice things for our customers is if you don't have experience with that and you want to kind of lean on us, we have a team that can do that for a small fee, right? It's a flat rate, which is handy. So moving into deployment and management, that's kind of the arrows. And then down here, we're mentioning Altiris, Intune, Landesk, really all of that's tools. And then central management will be able to support that as well once it has deployments in it. We're thinking that's going to be end of June, somewhere around there. Might be a little bit later, but we'll see. So first is thinking about, I'm going to be deploying, say, with Puppet or Chef or Ansible. What I have in those is providers, and the providers already have a lot of things in them. I get to write in those languages to manage the configuration and installation of Chocolatey, and of course also the packages and software that we're going to be managing as well. When it comes to things like SCCM and really Avanti, Landesk, anything that can run scripts, it's a little bit more naive, right? So I'm working with PowerShell in those tools to direct Chocolatey what to do, right? We have scripting best practices that we have out on our website as well that really helps you through understanding how to write those scripts. SCCM is typically the one we hear about the most, and how do we do that integration? Typically, it's a PowerShell packaging application job, and you just direct it on what to do there. So, reporting. When we look at Chocolatey with reporting, we have, of course, the ability to see all the stuff that Chocolatey's managing, because we do have Chocolatey, a client, installed on each machine. And we also are able to see all the stuff that Chocolatey's not managing. One of the nice things we can do in Chocolatey for Business, because we typically don't deploy onto greenfield machines, right? We're deploying places we already have software. We can simply run Choco Sync, and it'll start taking over all of that software very quickly. So, and we'll be managing everything with Chocolatey. Another thing as well is package audit, and this is kind of what that looks like, get a little bit bigger, where we can see not just what's installed, but also who installed it when. We're also tracking that history, and that all rolls up into central management for us. Another really nice thing about Chocolatey is being able to see what's out of date on systems. This is super handy because a lot of things will tell you maybe you're out of date. It won't tell you how far out of date. What Chocolatey's going to do is, if there's a new version available, you see what that version is as well, right? So you see the old version, you see the new version, and if you are, hitting maintenance windows or whatever, hopefully you're going to know what's going to upgrade on that next maintenance window. If you see something like that very first entry up there, which is an SSH server that's 2 major versions out of date, holy moly, be taking that down immediately, probably doing some emergency maintenance, right? Trying to figure out why it wasn't getting upgraded on those maintenance windows. We also roll that information up into central management. We're actually going to see that. So AutoSync, this is just really handy. We add this to reporting because it ensures that the Chocolatey packages that we have installed that are tracked to software stay there or get removed based on when that software does something. So if it's like Chrome and Chrome upgrades every 5 minutes, it's tracking that upgrade. It's keeping the same package version, but it is tracking what's happening on the back end, so it knows what version is actually installed in software, in programs and features. Another really nice thing we can do with reporting is if you are using SCCM or something else, we can actually make that more accurate. We can show it everything that Chocolatey knows about, right? So if there are certain packages that do have underlying native installers, there's no need to create an entry. For those that are there that we know, like sysinternals tools, right? Things that will never have installation, we can actually track them and bring them into programs and features, and they'll flow down into those other systems. And that's particularly handy for organizations. Central management, a little bit bigger view of that, just shows us all of the software that's out there at this side, all of the machines that are under management, and we can get reporting on that, and we're able to export that report and move it out. Whole bunch more features, and then the roadmap. So we're looking to do quite a bit more. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because I'm trying to get us into the demo. And so if you're interested in learning more, we'd recommend taking out the docs, kind of working with our community. We have a very expansive community. There's Gitter, there's Slack, there's other places you can kind of get plugged in and ask questions. And then, of course, Chocolatey NuGet on Twitter is a good place to reach out and ask questions as well. If you are interested in kind of taking that commercial side for a test drive, I'd say reach out to sales on the contact form, and they can kind of get you started down that path. If you are a university or nonprofit of some sort, we have tremendously great pricing for you. So definitely reach out. So anyone in here doing all of what I just mentioned? Oh, no. I was going to say, anybody, go ahead and high five. And that was for them. It's a waste of... All right, so first things first. So we come to a machine, and we don't have Chocolatey installed. Hopefully that comes through OK. Do I need to make that bigger? It's good? OK. So come to something, and we don't have Chocolatey installed. So what do we need to do to get Chocolatey installed? Well, we need to go run that particular command. I'm going to cheat a tiny bit. I have this nice string here, so I'm just going to call it. So if we take a look at that one, let's install Chocolatey. You can see we're just asking to install Chocolatey, right? So the first time we're installing Chocolatey, we do have to go out to the community to get it. After that, we'll be able to download it and put it so all of our future deployments won't have to use that. So let's go ahead and run that guy. So that should get us Chocolatey installed. Unfortunately, this one does use the internet, and I don't have the internet. So that was one step we forgot. And I'm going to join with that guy. So that should get me on something. Yeah. So that string is out on the website. If you go to chocolatey.org/install, that string is there. And I'm going to go ahead and pull that up. So chocolatey.org install. And this particular string that I'm using is actually just this very second one here, right? I'm skipping the bypass, but that just sets bypass for the process in case we have a very restrictive kind of process. We will need to run this as an administrator to get it installed administratively. If we install Chocolatey as a non-administrator, it's going to be expecting to go somewhere else because it wants to lock down those default directories by default. It's too many defaults. The location it goes to, it's going to want to lock down those directories to administrators only. All right, so let's try that again. Now that we have internet, hopefully that made it in here. Oh, it looks like it did. So this is going to go out and get Chocolatey from the community website there, pull it on in, and hopefully if I haven't already got myself a restriction, if rate limited, we'll be good to go. So that's going to get Chocolatey installed, and once Chocolatey is installed, we'll be able to do a little bit more. Looks like we did get the profile installed too. So you try Choco, we don't have anything there, but if we do reload our profile, and then we type Choco, we get tab completion, right? That's kind of low down there, so I'm going to move it up. Tab completion is pretty fantastic. If we have a profile already set up, it will go ahead and drop it in there. If we don't have a profile, it'll tell us it wasn't able to set that up. But on the docs page, there's something that's going to give us that information for that. And so now that I have it installed, kind of my next step is to look at how do I install the license edition. And so as I come down here and just kind of walk through, there's a set of instructions here, right? So the very first is we're going to install a recent version of Chocolatey. We just did that, right? So now we need to take our license file. And so we have a license file sitting cd licenses. Yeah, so there's our license file. So what we're going to do is we're going to run that command to create that directory, new item type directory. Hopefully this is already set. Sweet. And then the next step, we're going to be wanting to go ahead and copy that license into that folder, so that gives us that first step in getting licensed. So if we go copy item, I did not write a script for this. I didn't think I would need to. We'll see. We'll just do tab completion and Chocolatey install license. Yeah, of course you hate that. How's that? All right. So if that was correct, we have Chocolatey now installed, but it's telling us the next step is we actually need to install the extension. We get nice sets of words here. And so the next step into installing that extension is that we need to go download that or install it. And if we are on a trial, of course, we're going to have received a download link for that, and we'll go a different way. But we do have that locally, and so what I'm going to do is take a look and do a Choco source list, see what we have. By default, we have the Chocolatey community repository, and we have this license repository as well that came on once we put the license there. So we can go Choco install or upgrade Chocolatey, chocolatey.extension -y. And I should go get that. And I did go for the one that was downloading. I didn't have to do that. I had that locally. And so what we're really wanting to do is kind of go through this set of exercises here for setting up Chocolatey for internal organizational use. And so when you come to chocolatey.org and you click on Docs here on the right, and scroll on down until you get to the how-tos. How-tos are at the bottom down here, a little further down. The very last two are the important ones here. So one of these is automating package internalizer. It says use package internalizer. We're going to change that text to let us know that that's automating package internalizer. And then setting up Chocolatey for internal organizational use. And so this is kind of a one-time thing. It can take about 2 hours. We're hoping to do it in the next 15 minutes. So we'll see how that works, right? And so really that first thing is that we're going to prep for internal use to save time, because a lot of that set of instructions is so kind of what we started, but then the next step is to go through, and you can see there's a lot of steps here. The nice thing about this is battle tested. I've had my 10-year-old do it when she was 9. She's a dancer. She's not technical. She did okay. We think most people can figure that out. What's even better is, of course, if you're not on open source, if you have the commercial edition, you just scroll on down a little further, and we have the script, right? So this should save a lot of time. And the script just gets Chocolatey installed. The next thing that it does is it sets some of those nice features. But then the big meat of it is this Choco download, where it's going and internalizing just about everything that we're going to want to take to our internal repository that's Chocolatey related, right? That next thing is setting up Chocolatey on a machine. It's optional because we're not typically walking up to a video game machine or something that has absolutely no internet access and plug it in a USB key. We can skip this step, right? And so we've done the first two things. So the next is we need to set up a package repository. And so, of course, now I come back over here, and we'll just do list local only, see what we got installed. You'll notice we are now on Chocolatey for Business, right? So that's good. All right, so over here, I have a machine that's already pre-set up. I'm going to go ahead and set Nexus onto it. So if I jump into that same directory, see Vagrant LS. And so in here, we can see that we have that same set of scripts. That next script is that installation of Nexus. So if we just run a type on 2 there, take a look at what we got. All we're doing, that we normally do is we would download and install Nexus repository first, and then we would just run that install. So we already have gotten it. So if we take a look at our sources here, source list, you'll see that we have the license source, and it's disabled, and we have our local source, which is C packages. And so if I just do a quick look at what's in there, this is going to scroll fast because there's a lot of things. We're going to take some of those. We're going to want to put them up onto a location. So now, and that's going to be Nexus, and we're getting ready to install Nexus. So let's go ahead and do that. And so this should install Nexus, and one of the nice things that you'll see about Nexus is it has a dependency on Java, right? So it's not nice. I mean, we're going to have to deal with that later. But it does have that dependency on Java, and hopefully it's moving to OpenJava. But we'll get Java installed because we've taken that dependency and we've said this is the version constraints that go along with that, and it's going to go through and start getting that installed for us. Installs that, then installs that. And so that's another really nice thing about Chocolatey is that dependency management, right? Thinking about, I need to install this, and then I can install that. So we're going to come back and check on that in a minute. All right. So we also want to create some packages. So typically the first thing we would do is say Choco new, and I'd say something like Adobe Reader or Chrome or something. What that's going to do is generate out some packaging for me. So if I take a look here, you can see that I have put it in the wrong place, but that's okay. It has generated a few files for me here, and so one of those is a README, one of those is a to-do, and we have a whole bunch of scripts that were also generated. If we take a look at that to-do, what's nice about that is going to tell us that it's super tiny. It's going to kind of give us like, hey, are you using this for organizational use? Okay, you're building your packages this way. Are you doing this for the community repository? Okay, you're doing it this way. When you look at that community repository, it's a very bad example of how to build packages just because a lot of them are downloading things at runtime. And we like to say that the amount of packages that are in that community repository, that 6,000, actually represents about 5% of the Chocolatey packages that are out there. It's like the iceberg, though. We can never see what's below that. Because in an organization, I mean, they're going to have thousands of packages typically. We know there's a few organizations, we know about how many packages they have, but you know, every week we learn about new folks that are using Chocolatey that we didn't even know. That's because Chocolatey doesn't have any call home in it, right? It doesn't reach out to the internet. If you've turned off everything, it has no reach out whatsoever. So that's particularly handy. So maybe that's why Chocolatey is popular, maybe because the documentation there is documentation. I don't know. Maybe it's because there's really nothing else that does what it does. I'm thinking it's probably that too. But this kind of goes through that process of how to fill out those package contents and you know, kind of at a high level, how to deal with each of those different items. I was mentioning is linking up to that test environment so we can get that confidence in our deployments really early. This is just a nice example of one you can start with, and you can really plug in anything you want to use. There's also a workshop, and that workshop is going to take you through everything from like learning about general packaging to pretty much everything else. How much time is it? 10 to 5, 5 minutes, or 10 minutes. All right, so we need to get booking here. So let's see how this went. So this is waiting for Nexus service to be ready, so it's a good thing we jumped over. So next thing, while I'm waiting for that to be ready, if we want to take a look and let's say I want to create some packages here. So I'm going to jump in here and take a look at these installers that I have. So here's 1Password. I can simply right-click on that, and I could bring up a UI, and that's the Package Builder UI. I don't have to fill anything out, but I can come to the new spec, and I can put in some of the optional stuff it's not going to be able to extract. Alternatively, and even better, I can just simply right-click and go ahead and have it create that unattended deployment very quickly, and then I would have that and be able to push that up. So I'm going to have to reload to see it. You see there's that new package, and it's already generated out that nice new spec for me. And in that new spec, I can see a few things. I didn't tell it the encoding. Let's see, language is XML, so that'll make it look a little nicer. When we talk about dependencies, that's kind of what this little area here is. So if I depended on Java, I could say, hey, I depend on Java at a minimum version of, I don't know, 6.0. But I could also come in here and I could say, actually, I depend on Java, and it needs to be at least 6, but it needs to be less than 9, right? So I could have something that depends on 6, 7, and 8, but not 9. And so if I try to install something else that depends on at least 9, it'll actually conflict and say, hey, we can't do that. So that gives us that information ahead of time to keep us from breaking something that's already there if we were deploying things, multiple things to something. We don't do that, right? All right, so let's check this guy. It is now up, well, possibly. So I want to see, do I have Chrome installed? That is a no. We'll install Chrome here. And we're waiting for that guy. We'll come over here and take a look at Central Managed, so CCM admin. So up here, we have this console. Oh, this comes up really nicely up here. And we can see all the computers that we have under management. Right now it's just 2. We're going to hook that third one up in a second. You'll see this one back here that we're running Nexus on. It's called Nexus. The CCM server, of course, needs to check into itself. And we can also see all the software that's out there. And all of the stuff that's outdated will bubble up to the top. So I made sure I had a lot of things that were out of date. What's nice about that is if we're curious, let's go see what Notepad++ is outdated on. We can see that it's outdated on 2 different machines, right? So we know where we need to go and get that upgraded. We can take this information here, we can export it to Excel or PDF. And of course, as we're coming in on these machines as well, we can see a little bit more information about the machines that we have under management and the software that's on them. We're going to continue to expand this out, so we're going to put a lot more stuff here. Another really nice thing is I can get a nice outdated software report that I can pass off to management. And this is nice because we get something like that, right? pretty handy. I picked that one on purpose because I knew it was on both. It's the only one that's on both that falls there. So this should have the Nexus up, possibly. We'll start Chrome. Fingers crossed. 8081. If not, that's pretty much the demo. So, sweet, it's coming up. Or we have until 6, right? Kidding. All right, so when we go to set up a repository in Nexus, and you're going to find Artifactory and Nexus are very similar in this. No, we don't ever say passwords through that. We go and we set up repositories, and we have a nice selection of different repositories that we can create. So if we click on Create here, you're going to see, of course, there's Bower, Docker containers we can put in here, Maven. I guess there's even Git LFS, and a few other things, right? And so we want to focus on NuGet, hosted, right? And we will call that something like Choco base. So Chocolatey is compatible with NuGet type packages, enhances NuGet packages, and so it always is compatible to go into NuGet type repositories. So we're going to go ahead and do that. The next step is for us to take a look at our URL here. Yep, that's the one we wanted. And one change you have to make in security, you have to go into Realms to enable NuGet API keys, and you go ahead and pop that over, and then each user gets an API key, and you kind of define roles and profiles to kind of figure out who gets access to what. And so this admin kind of gets access to everything, so that makes that a little bit easier. So if we were to go say, I want to see my admin and see what his privileges are, we're just trying to get to that API key, right? So we're going to access that. And I got us the API key. Now we need to go get these packages into the repository. So I'm going to bring this up, and I'm going to drop this key right here. We'll make that a little bit bigger so we can see what's going on. So we're setting the API key, and that way for each of these different packages, so Chocolatey, agent, the extension, we're going to push those up into that repository. We're actually testing that we have this set appropriately. And so the next thing is we will go ahead and run that guy. So hopefully that gets that configuration set, and we're going to push packages up there. If we go over to that repository that we just created while it's running, we can see that, okay, Chocolatey's gotten there so far. And so this gives us that ability to then deploy Chocolatey internally when we deploy it to other machines. So if we run that refresh again, which maybe that was too much of a refresh. There we go. So you can see we got Chocolatey agent, we got our Chocolatey extension, and Chocolatey. And so we really have one more package that we want to get in there, and that is our license package. So if we take a look at our instructions as we go down. So we've gone through 2, we've gone through 3, now we're at 4, right? So we're going to create a package for the license itself, right? And so now we can bring that script over here, and let's say we want to run that and take a look at that. Was that step 4, right? CD. We'll take a look at that type. It's that big script, same script from over there. And so now we'll just run Choco, maybe without caps log. Go ahead and run that. And so that's going to get us that license created, and it's pretty much that fast. You can also grab it right out of there, paste it in, and it'll run the same thing for you. And so it says, hey, we got a package created over here at Choco Packages. And so let's go find that guy and go ahead and put him up there. So we'll go over here to our Choco setup packages. And we can simply do a Choco push like we did from the command line. Of course, we can also bring this up. We don't have any of that information yet, so of course we need to go get that. And we know we have that in the script here, so we're just going to cheat and pull it from there and add packages here. Sure. I want to run this. Copy. All right. I don't think that's going to show up until we close this down. So we're going to close it down and reopen it. And we'll be able to push that package up there. So we're going to push that. We're going to push up 1Password too. So if I run this, if I pick the right one, so I could also type all that in, type in that API key. I just wanted to have it in there so I didn't have to. If I'm pushing to something that's HTTP, I always have to force push. Otherwise, it will error. So I'm going to go ahead and select that. And that should go ahead and push that package up for us to that Nexus repository, hopefully. Maybe not. No, I should be able to see it. Looks like there was an issue. Of course there was an issue. There's always an issue. Give it a second shot here. So it's not going to go up from here. But I would be putting packages up there. And the last thing that we're going to do is we're going to try to hook it up and have it check into central management. And so that is this last step here, which is setting up this configuration. So we're going to run these 2 bits in the config. And then we're going to open for questions or call it. So the first is I have to tell it where that service is. And that means I can have multiple services running on multiple machines. So as I scale up and need that, I'm able to scale that. And then the next thing is I do need to tell it to go ahead and use central management. So if this works, then that's going to be a good thing. So Control copy. And then I'm going to do one thing here. Yeah, of course you did. As soon as we turn that on, it should go ahead. I like to run Beartail just to see. I don't have Beartail, so I'm going to do Choco source add -in local -source C packages. And the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to remove that community one. So Choco source remove. I should get rid of that. So I'm going to install Beartail so we can watch a log. And that might come out super tiny. Chocolatey. We don't have the Chocolatey agent installed. That's what we got. Okay, so Choco install Chocolatey agent -y. Once that installs, that should hook up and it should start checking in. So, what time am I at? 5 past. All righty. Any questions while we're kind of waiting on this? Yeah, checked in. So it's pretty nice how that came in. So I am surprised I didn't get to test that part. So it's really nice to see it actually work nicely. That's all I have. Other questions?